Today we have a representative, Black American female. Her name is Shondra Summers-Armstrong. She's Assembly for the Assembly of the State of Nevada, and she represents this area. And I'm sure that she would like to explain to you guys, get your attention, and sort of like give you an idea of what she's been doing and how she's trying to fulfill a lot of the things that you mentioned, through the legislation. So she's open to asking questions, and I'm going to ask her some questions too, but I'm sure she would like to, at least express some things that's going on. She's been in the Assembly this is her third term, is that correct?
Second.
This is her second term. So let's hear something from Ms. Armstrong right now, and, we'll carry it on from there.
Thank you, Miriam, if I may use your first name.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I'm Shondra Summers-Armstrong. I am the Assembly Representative for Nevada Assembly District 6, which our boundaries are to the south, Bonanza Road, to the north, Cheyenne, to the west, Decatur Boulevard, and it travels north and intersects through Rancho Boulevard to Cheyenne, and on the east, Main Street to Four Master, and then at Four Master it goes up Las Vegas Boulevard to Cheyenne, jogs around the Walnut Community Center, heads up to Lamb, does a little jig around Alexander, and comes back to Civic Center and then to Cheyenne. A little bit about me. I've been in Las Vegas for 33 years. I'm married to Carl Armstrong, who's an attorney here. He's my second husband. I came here in 1990 with my first husband, who was in the Air Force. We divorced, and then I got a job at the county and met my second husband, who is Carl Armstrong, and there would not be a third. We have three wonderful sons: Brandon, who's 36, Dexter, who's 34, and our son together is Kieran, who is 21, almost 22. I am from California. I grew up in Oakland, where my parents are ministers. I was a very religious background. My grandparents were ministers. And we sort of lived in this religious bubble that was full of service, that was full of kindness to one another, that was very strict, but very informative. Church politics is a real thing, and I had to learn how to manage it and live through it as a kid. When I came to Nevada in 1990, I had no idea I would stay. Actually, I did not want to stay. But life be lifing. And God does his own thing, and he said, no, you're not going anywhere. And I've been here ever since. I started in advocacy and sort of community service. When we moved to we live adjacent to historic West Las Vegas. I started by sitting on the West Las Vegas plan team in like 2000. I sat on the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. I was a union member in SEIU 1107. I was a captain, a steward, chief steward, and executive board member. And I've run for city council, not successfully, but certainly with my whole heart. I ran in 2018, and I didn't make it. But I think the run that I did in 2018 for city council really raised my visibility in the community and let people see where my heart is. And from that, I was asked to run for Nevada Assembly in 2019. I was successful, and then I've run successfully again in 2022. And so our session is over for 2023. We are on a 4-month, every other year session in Nevada. It is 120 grueling days of living in Carson City and trying to get legislation passed that benefits our community. And the last thing I'll say is I didn't tell you where my people were from. So I'm a Cali girl, but my grandparents came from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, my grandmother, and my grandfather from New Edensboro, Arkansas. And they drove to California in 1939 with 6 children. 5 children. And that's where my mother was born, and that's where I was born. And that's my, where I was born, but my home, most of my life has been spent here in Las Vegas.
Well, we're very happy that you decided to come to Las Vegas and that you decide to run for Assembly.
Thank you.
And that leads me to wonder why did you decide to run for Assembly and for the district that you were in?
Well, I believe that my strong suit, because I worked at the RTC for 26 years. And any of you know about the CAT bus. It used to be called the CAT bus. Now they just call it the RTC bus.
Oh, okay.
But that was an experience for me that really informed me of how public works and the infusion of government funds helps sustain and grow communities. You'd be surprised. If you look at around this town, you will see everywhere that government, it's called public-private partnerships, they do great things to keep communities up and running, to build new communities, and to sustain communities. And I think my work at the RTC gave me some real good insights on that. I ran for city council and unsuccessfully, but I did that because I really believe in my community. That's why I do the work here. When I lost in 2018, I was like done. I was like, I'll just do the kind of community work that I've been doing. I was part of the Stop the F Street Closure Coalition back in 2008 to 2016. You know, I was a union steward, so I'm not afraid of the work that community work is. But I was asked, someone came to me and said, you know, William McCurdy II was leaving the assembly to run for Clark County, and he said, you know, I'd like you to consider it. And I had to sit on it for a minute and think about it. You know, it's a big commitment. But then I began to look into the importance of state legislation and how that affects our communities. And I thought, you know what, it's important, I should try. And I was successful, and people have been open and supportive of me. And I'm just I'm honored. It is a privilege. It truly is a privilege to say that I represent my community.
And you know, that's wonderful, because we actually do need someone from the community up there representing us, because there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. Now, as a legislature in the Assembly, you have, what bills have you presented representing the community that may still be in process or that you accomplished?
Okay, well, we'll just talk about what happened this year in 2023. This was considered the 82nd legislative session for Nevada. And I'll start here. So October, we recognize National Long-Term Care Residents' Rights Month and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I have 2 bills that I worked on in the interim, which is the time between sessions, and then was able to present during the session and were successful. The first one is AB 202, and that bill revises provisions governing electronic communication devices in certain healthcare facilities. That's the legal jargon that they use when they describe the bill. What it really means is that it allows residents or their family or their representative to be able to put something called a granny cam in the space of a resident of a long-term care facility. Many of us know that during COVID, people were unable to communicate with their loved ones because of the lockdown. This legislation allows a family to have this type of a device. It prohibits the facility from turning it off, from laying it down, from covering it up. You have to have permission of the person. Most long-term care facilities are 2 people in a room. You do have to have the agreement of your roommate to get it done, and you have to work with the facility, right? And the family has to pay for the device and the internet connection. But it is a step in the right direction, not perfect, but a step in the right direction for transparency. The video can only be viewed by the representative who has the authority to put it in that room. So it's 2 ways. The facility cannot intervene in that except by court order. So that's one. The second one, so that has to do with long-term care and dignity of people who live in long-term care facilities. The second one I'm proud of is AB 257. Here's the legal jargon. It's relating to forensic medical examinations of certain victims of certain crimes. There's an organization here in town called Safe Nest. They, along with other organizations, help women who are victims of domestic violence and help them to, remove them from situations, provide them with temporary residences and safety. One of the things that they asked before the session began was if I would carry a bill on their behalf which would allow for forensic strangulation examinations to be paid for by the county. Why is that important? First of all, we know that we have an epidemic in this town, in the nation, but Nevada is generally in the top 10 in the nation for domestic violence incidences and death. The crazy thing about strangulation is that a woman, generally it's a woman, can be strangled and there will be no outward marks for a couple of days. This examination has to be done by a specialized nurse. It's called a SANE examination. And that nurse is specially trained on what to look for, vocal cord damage, other kinds of physical things, and for it to be paid for by the county, and then the county would seek reimbursement. This is important because these examinations cost $800 to $1,500 each.
Wow.
And most women who are running from a domestic violence situation don't have that kind of money to throw out.
Or don't have access.
And don't have access. And so this allows women who are in these situations to be able to get help and then to help the prosecutorial process if need be so that they can have some justice. And so I was proud to carry those. There's a couple of others. The last one I'll talk about is 283, which for doulas, and this is specifically important to the Black community. Doulas are non-medical birthing navigators. They help women who are in the birthing process and help to navigate them through the process. They are an advocate, they are knowledge carriers, and they really are supportive of women who are birthing. The crazy thing is, most in the past, if you had a doula or a midwife, you were a wealthy, generally white female, because those are expensive. But this will allow women who are on Medicaid to be able to get these services. Why is that important? Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts.
Yeah.
And so this is helpful. And what this bill did this year, in 21, we were able to just get doulas paid for by Medicaid. This time, we went back to make sure that they could be paid in a respectful manner. So now doulas are going to be paid as a fee for service. And if you are a doula and you are helping women in our rural areas and in our tribal lands, they will get a 10% increase for driving. Most of the doulas are in Reno, so and they will be driving, and that gives them a little extra money for their extra time. It's 2 hours, I think, from Reno to Winnemucca, and we have a lot of frontier areas in the state. So I'm really proud of these 3 bills, and I think that they are concrete up. That's legislation that is informed by community people.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought them.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to know. That's wonderful, and I really appreciate your effort in presenting those bills. But like for your community, what are some of the overriding things that concerns them, that's more common to your area that may not be to all of Las Vegas, that your community wanted to have the legislators look at?
Well, so there's 42 of us in the legislature,
Right.
And so we have probably the highest number of black folks who are representatives this time than we've ever had in the history of the state. And so various people carried bills. My colleague in the Assembly, Claire Thomas, carried a bill for Juneteenth. My colleague in the Senate, Senator Dina Neal, carried a bill to get some funding for Windsor Park. My colleague Howard Watts in the Assembly carried the bill to take the language about slavery out of the. So it's a collective effort. It is. I think it's impossible and probably unfair to expect one Assembly person to cover all issues, and we. I think it's important that people work what their passions are. I think you're more effective that way. For instance, Howard Watts is a environmental guru and specialist. And a lot of the times the bills that are brought that have to do with environmental justice affect our communities. When we talk about heat islands, when we talk about water quality, when we talk about the things that have been co-opted issues by others, and it makes great press. But we know, as black people who are living, and black and brown people who live in urban communities, we have always been concerned about air pollution. Why? Because we've known for generations that our children have the highest rates of asthma. Well, why is that? Well, I'm sure Mr. Rodney can tell you that when we talk about the history of freeways and how they were developed in the 50s, they were always, without fail, cutting through black and brown communities.
That's true.
And so environmental justice is important. So we've got an environmental justice proponent and champion in Howard Watts. And so I like maternal health. That's a really important thing for me. And so that's just, and redevelopment stuff. And so I just try to fit in and carry things that I know that I can champion and present well, and then do the best that I can.
Now, they're talking about putting a 67-story hotel and casino over here on the historic West Side. How, the neighbors, are not all in accord with that. Everybody don't want that, because in a way that is going to dislocate a lot of the people in the community. How, in your role, can you, have any impact on that?
Well,
what does the community need to do to help support you, to help do something about that?
So there is a difference in area of responsibility for elected officials. My role at this point is a state assembly person. Okay. And my role is to listen to the community and our advocacy groups that care about our community and want to work in our community and work on things that are within my purview. Local land use is not in the purview of the assembly.
Okay.
What I will say, though, is that doesn't mean that I'm not concerned, and it doesn't mean that I don't have a voice, because I'm a citizen here, right? I just live a few blocks from here. I think what my suggestion to our community members would be is to be in, if you are opposed to it, to be in contact with our councilman. Okay. And to participate in whatever meetings they are having in the community about the zoning of that building, about the construction of that building, and about what people feel the impact of that building would be. I'm a big proponent of affordable housing, and I carried legislation during the session that would have affected how our system of summary eviction happens. because that all is intertwined. So I am active in the community, going to justice court, sitting in justice court in Las Vegas and North Las Vegas, and I'll be going to Henderson soon to learn more and to help from that perspective, because I carried legislation that was actually vetoed, went through the House and the Senate, was vetoed by the governor, but I'm still engaged in that. So that's how I can be active. Once this session is over, then I become the activist. Now I have to go and listen and talk to groups and talk to organizations and build power, right? So those are things that I can do, because the resolution is a legislative one.
Right.
So that's how I can move things forward. I don't want to be disrespectful to other elected officials, and I think that we have to allow, or we should, our elected officials to do their work, but our job is to influence that with our voices, because we are residents of this community.
And that's wonderful, and you have did a great job.
Thank you.
We do appreciate you. She has a very short time. Is there any other questions that the gathering would like to ask them?
So I have one. You mentioned that you were a part of the LGBT team, as in I guess Las Vegas community plan, urban plan.
So many years ago, so I've been here 24 years just in this neighborhood. In the early 2000s, the city of Las Vegas councilman at the time, I think it was Larry Weekly. Before that, there was, oh my goodness, Frank Hawkins, I think, did the first West Las Vegas plan for redevelopment. And they would convene a group of concerned citizens to update the plan at different times and talk about and work towards moving the plan into reality.
So my question is, what outcomes for the development of a vision of a prosperous, healthy West Side have we seen?
So redevelopment is a very expensive and difficult undertaking. I think we all know that. So from the West Las Vegas Plan team, which I think the last time it met was in 2002, we had a couple of changes in leadership in the historic West Side as far as council persons were concerned. And Ricky Barlow, I believe, around 2015 convened the 100 Plan. And there were community meetings and some, charrettes, and this plan was developed. It's beautiful. It's online, and it sat on the shelf for a few years. When Cedric Creer became the city councilman, he wanted to dust that off and move that plan from a written document to a living and working document. And he convened something called the the 100 Plan in Action. And what we see now in the 100 Plan in Action is his vision of a list of projects in hierarchy of importance to him, and he is working on those things. So if you are interested in redevelopment at a local level and you believe that you have something to offer or you want to work on that, the councilman's office is the place to be. He has the authority and the resources, and that's what he has been doing in the last several years.
Okay, I just want to say I came from Cleveland, Ohio in 1994 here to Las Vegas. And you mentioned you were with the cat bus, or I called it some derogatory name back then, because they didn't have all I had a service up to 12 o'clock midnight. And so now it's a very good service. But when I became president of IBEW, and then we were part of the coalition of black trade unionists, unfortunately they were paying cat bus drivers $9 an hour. You remember that, right? And so what we would do, y'all would want to go on strike, but a coalition of black trade unions, we would go out and do actions. That's what we did. We did actions for other unions. And Because in Cleveland, they was making, when I came from there, they was making $25 an hour back in 1975, 76. And when I came out here and I saw that, I said, wow. So when you mentioned that, so I work closely also with Senator Joe Neal from 2002 about, and we went down to Maryland. We used to go to Carson City together. And I'm glad to see that Dina Neal is following her dad's footsteps and doing powerful things. And one of the things that I would like to see happen in your district and that's the district downtown, Maine and all of that. Is that correct?
No, it's Bonanza Road. It's the south border is Bonanza Road and the north border is Cheyenne.
Okay, so what I would like to see happen, which I introduced it to Mayor Goodman, her husband. I went in his office when Barlow was there, and I went in the office, and what I introduced to them was having a community of office, within the community. So now you can do it within many communities, but you would have, what you're doing is the bills that you pass for women and all of that. My wife, she's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. She did 18 years in women's health. And every one of the things that you talked about is some of the same things that I went to the mayor and say, in this community, you need to have it where women that's abused or whatever, they can come directly there. If a person that needs help in other areas, housing, they come to here. But it was in one whole community, not streets, but like one area of expertise that individuals can go to get help. Even within police, there's sections. So I would love to see something happen like that in Las Vegas, because there's that invisible realm of people that need help, can't get help because they don't have the availability, the easy availability to get help. So I would like to see that. You understand?
I do, and I agree with some of what you said.
Okay.
So let me just say this: I've learned a lot through Safe Nest and some of the other advocacy groups that work with women who are battered. Mm-hmm. It is dangerous for them to go someplace that is known.
What I mean is to send them, because I was with Independent Order Forces. I raised thousands of dollars and donated. Matter of fact, I gave up Halloween in my organization because they had it every year. They spent $5,000. I took that money and we gave it to Safeness. So I know about certain things, but I know that, but someone that can go to them to seek help for that person. That's my point. They just need an avenue to get help.
Well, I think that I hear what you're saying, and I don't know how well you know this community. But for those people who are from here and have lived here a while, Assembly District 6 goes over to Main Street and Owens. And if you've been over there lately, you will see that we have a concentration in this area, which has historically been, it was historically black because of Jim Crow. Y'all do realize that we had Jim Crow in Nevada, and black people were forced to live west of the train tracks, and we were not allowed to leave this area after dark. And so when the freeway came, it came through here with no access to the freeway. We had folks like Lou Bertha Johnson, is that right?
They tried to take that away, but
she had to fight to get an entrance on the freeway. We didn't have an entrance to the 95 freeway until Commissioner Yvonne Atkinson Gates had one put on. There was no way to get on the 95, but they were certainly able. It was well into the 1990s, but they've always found a way to bring all resources for folks in need into this community, which is why we have a concentration of places like Shade Tree, Las Vegas Rescue Mission. We have the Catholic Charities. Yeah. Now there's the courtyard on Main Street and Foremaster. So what happens when we have concentrations And when help for people in the community is not dispersed as it should be across the valley, what happens is that we end up with all the ills that go along with homelessness and I can't believe y'all taking pictures and I ain't got no makeup on. So I thought it's supposed to be radio. Unfair.
It is.
Funding for the school system.
No, I'm not even talking about the school system. I'm talking about concentrating the continuum of care for high need communities in one space.
Okay.
Right? And so what happens is we end up with things like James Gay Park being closed because people are congregating and sleeping there because they're trying to get into the shelters on Owens, and then if they can't get in, they're sleeping at James Gay Park. Same thing happened with the park by the freeway, and now we're seeing an increase at Lorenzi Park. Homelessness, the need for mental health services, the need for support for people with substance use problems is a citywide, a region-wide problem, statewide problem. And we are concentrating all the care over here. So what happens, and what we have seen and what has been a challenge, is that our communities are unable to attract businesses who will develop here and housing, because when I worked on the Stop the F Street, I'll just give you an example. I worked 8 years on the Stop the F Street closure. They closed F Street at Bonanza in my opinion, with very little notice. We thought we were doing a good thing because we fought and marched on the Strip and really worked hard to get that street reopened. And what happened after it was reopened was that we began to see again a congregation of homeless coming through the neighborhood, and the people in the community I've gotten fussed at. I thought I was doing good work, and I still believe I did good work, right? We did good work.
Right.
It was important. But every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Right.
And the opposite reaction is that the Las Vegas rescue mission almost doubled in size.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also brought people into the community who need services. But if they can't get in, what do? They sleep on the lawns and on the sidewalk in front of the houses of folk who live in the community. And if we don't have resources to help them, yes, we need this, but we have to be honest about it. It's not just one-dimensional. We have a big issue, and we have to have multiple ways to address it so that we are helping people, but also not harming others at the same time.
And also, in addition to that, devaluing the property in this area.
Well, this is, and this is right.
As long as we allow the homelessness to come in this community, they're going to keep the value of the property down, which the people that are trying to gentrify this area is using that as a tool. The community as a whole need to come together and work together, so that they can, avoid that. I mean, all those type of services should not be in this one concentrated area, because as Assemblywoman Armstrong said, you're more or less bringing in all these other elements in this area, which really affects each one of the people in the community.
Well, I think there has to be balance.
Yeah,
right. There has to be balance.
They don't have that. They don't have that in Summerlin.
And in 2019, there was a move by the state of Nevada, and they asked the region to address the homelessness crisis as a regional problem, right? And to work together, all of the entities, so that they could try and find solutions all across the region, all across the valley, to help with homelessness. I'm not sure where that is. I don't know if they've developed resources in other communities, but we are seeing, I believe, Commissioner Tick Sager-Bloom's just advertised that they're doing some transitional care and housing in his district, and some others are trying some different things. But humanity is not just over here. We still need to make sure that we are dispersing the needs and addressing people where they are. Homelessness is everywhere.
Because you're from Oakland, so
I am. I haven't lived there since 1985.
I've been there, and Oakland is terrible.
Yes, right, Mr. Rodney?
So you mentioned homelessness at least a couple of times. And by the way, I was a part of that F Street Coalition, and that needed to be done. But I do want to go back to the homelessness. As you know, I give away food. And we've given away millions of dollars of food to this community. I initially thought that the people I'd be giving food away to was going to be primarily homeless people. Even though we have given lots of food to homeless people, probably the greatest percentage of people we actually are giving food away to are people who work, people who are actually employed, but they're simply not making enough money. Also, the issue of the cost of housing, that even when we have enough housing, it's priced out of the range of the average worker, blue-collar worker. My question is, because of the influx of people from places like California, which has a higher cost of living, and New York, where I'm from, who can sell houses there and come here and buy houses cash and bank a lot of money, there's a constant supply of people who are willing to pay the high prices, but it's pricing people locally out of the market. The governor isn't seemingly for rent control. So a suggestion, and I've seen this work in places like back east, is when the private sector, which is incentivized by profit, are not willing to build or price houses that's affordable, then the government has stepped in. My question to you is, would you consider researching the possibility of Nevada State / Clark County partnering to build affordable as well as low-income housing that would prevent so many people from being on the streets and possibly needing all of those services that you spoke of earlier?
I am really glad you talked about this, because this is a really issue that is near and dear to my heart. I was reading a story in the RJ today. The average rent for a one-bedroom in this valley is above $1,800 a month. And we know that is probably a 30% increase from around 2018. The income of our residents has not risen any more than 3 to 7%, and I think that's on the high side, 7%. We have a crisis, and next week I will be attending the Nevada Housing Coalition's housing conference. It'll be my second time attending. And I go and try to learn what I can about affordable housing, because it is necessary and needed, and it's also difficult. So the little bit that I've learned, I'm not the guru, but the little bit that I have learned is that developing housing is extremely expensive. Developing affordable housing is even more expensive, and it's difficult. They call it the funding lasagna, where you have to keep rents at a certain level when you're doing affordable housing, depending on the area median income and whether or not you're building housing that's going to be for people who are in 30%, 60%, or up to 80%, whatever your AMI is and whatever target audience you have for that housing. You cannot go out and get it fully funded with traditional loans. So you have to use grants and borrow money from organizations who will give you a better rate. And you have to stack and package in order to be able to afford to build these the affordable housing. It is hard. And so the state of Nevada got a lot of money with ARP, and that money has been dispersed and is being dispersed, and we're going to see I think 500 or maybe 1,000 new units being put up. But I believe that we have opportunities in our communities for infill that are smaller, that are more compact, maybe 40 to 60 units. I think we have an opportunity to do that kind of work, but we have to have people who are interested in it from the perspective of humanity and not necessarily profit. And it is difficult.
So I would love to chat with you when I can get an appointment with your office.
Absolutely.
I do have some more ideas. I did want to point out for the record, and I want to encapsulate so people understand the predicament that we're in. If the average rent is $1,800
One bedroom.
for one bedroom, $1,800. In order for a person to work a 40-hour work week, the amount of money that they would have to make just to afford that one-bedroom apartment would be $30 an hour. $30 an hour. When the average income, especially in this community, is, I think, just under half of that. So you can see the predicament that people who are from this area, the burden that it would be, because most jobs simply don't pay $30 an hour. So thank you, Assemblywoman, for sharing that.
The majority of them aren't union. That's why.
Well, and I'll tell you, we had bills up north about this, and it is a real crisis. And if you're not a union employee, you're not making that kind of money. And even union people, I worked at the RTC for a long time, and even some of their union, even some of our employees were not making $20 an hour. It just depended on where you were. So we need support, right? So I was talking to one of my colleagues, or a community member yesterday, who wanted to meet with me about, some of these issues, and we need a champion. We need a champion. And I expressed to her this concern of mine. I've done this 2 sessions already. You do have a champion. You have several of them. You have people who go to the mat for very difficult issues. Senator Neal, I told you, talked about Windsor Park. That was that was a fight. Juneteenth was a fight. The bill to try and get a rent control was a fight. All these things that are important to our communities that have been historically disadvantaged systematically, are always trying to put things forward to help folks dig out of the failed promise of Reconstruction. There is always a force that is pushing against us, and we need the support of our communities. We cannot, and I will say it again, we cannot do this by ourselves. We have to have the support of communities. So this is where I encourage you and anyone who might be listening to get engaged in advocacy groups who send people up to the assembly and to the legislature when it's in session to advocate for things, to speak, to give their testimony, and to help us advocate for stuff. Pay attention to who you're voting for. What are these people talking about, and are they speaking the language of you and your community and the needs of your families? That's important. What's important to you, and are you expressing that to your elected officials? We had a legislative recap. We had 2 of them. Probably had the biggest crowds we've ever had right here in the community. Biggest crowd, meaning 65 people at Pearson and another 50 plus at Mariposa Lounge. That's a small percentage. My assembly district, if I'm not mistaken, has 50-something thousand registered voters. But we got 60 people to come and listen to a legislative recap. You spoke about the community and how they should come together. Yes, they should. Yes. But many of the pieces of land that are the houses, the land, a lot of people are renters. We don't have people who are landowners. We have a lot of absentee owners.
Yeah,
So it
60%.
is a very challenging. It's very challenging, and so we just have to be Johnny on the spot, making sure that we're advocating. And I think we need to just add one more, and I really do have to go.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Brenda Brown, Sauce in the City. Shout out. You mentioned as far as the community having to come together so that we can be at these different events where they are actually making the rules, right? And people vote for people that they know. So my one and only question is, you yourself personally, what are you doing to get to know your community, like one-on-one? I know back in the day they used to like go knock on the doors, but I don't see that so much anymore, and it seems like legislation is going this way and our community is going that way. And so I want to know, this upcoming year, what are we all going to do to get back in each other's faces?
So, do you live in 6? Do you live in this neighborhood around here?
No,
Okay.
but I am a native, so I grew up everywhere.
Okay. So I cannot speak for the behavior or the choices of any other elected official, but I can tell you that Shondra Summers-Armstrong knocks on doors. Okay? So I knock doors, I send mail, I make phone calls, and we text during the election cycle. In the interim, after the cycle is over, I try my best to be present. So when Miss Miriam asked me to come, I don't need to be in front of a crowd of 100 people. This is perfect for me. I was at the Optimist Club. Yes, I was at the Optimist Club the other night. They had a meeting, not in my district, but I got invited, so I went. Saturday, I will be talking about the issue of affordable housing at the Indie Fest. With the Nevada Independent is having a big thing, and I'll be in that. For Our Future just had something about housing about a month ago over at the East Las Vegas Library. I went to that, and I also mentioned that the Nevada Black Legislative Caucus had 2 events after the session was over so that we could talk to our community. We had one at Pearson on September 16th, and we had a second one at Mariposa Lounge on the 25th. So I try to be wherever people are. I try to be accessible to people. I have a website, ShondraArmstrong.org. You can reach out to me and email me, and I will be happy to set meetings or go to any community events that people are hosting to share what I know. I try to be around, right? It's hard to have an individual conversation with 50,000+ people. But I still encourage our community, if you're on Facebook or any social media, we post a significant amount of events. Please go to them. If we are having something, go to those events. That is where your elected officials are. Please go up to them and talk to them. We are accessible more than we are in any other state. And we have a close-knit community. Talk to people, ask them your questions, get involved. There are a number of community organizations, the ones that we know that are national, NAACP, NAN, there's Faith in Action, there's Plan Nevada, Make It Work Nevada, Make the Road Nevada. There are so many organizations that are trying to do the work, but they need people power and people support.
And that's where the Village Voices radio show comes in. We are the voice. We want to be the voice for the community. You know, we want to be where you can, if there's an event that's happening that's affecting the community, come on the Village Voices show and let everybody know, because we broadcast all over the world, so that it covers Las Vegas, Nevada. You know, you may not get the flyer, but if you listen to the Village Voices every Friday between 10 and 12 o'clock, we're going to tell you, you know. We're going to let you know where to meet and where to get together. But we want to thank Assemblywoman Armstrong for coming and meeting with us and telling us what. But we also have one more question by the head of the gathering, and Rodney, please ask your question.
So actually, Assemblywoman, what I wanted you to do was at some point maybe send out a newsletter, give us a flyer, and talk about the bills that you put forth that didn't make it, so that we as a community know what we need to get behind. For those of us who may be in leadership positions in the community, we'll know from you what we need to sort of inform other people in the community how they can best support you.
That's excellent.
All right.
Excellent idea.
So you can go onto my website, Shondra, SHONDRA, Armstrong.org. And where it says contact, please put your information there. I do send out a flyer. One went out yesterday, every 2 weeks. And in that flyer, I talk this week about AB 202. We've talked about some of the other bills. We talked about the bills that got canned and vetoed. And so I do my best to try and communicate. But I have, less than 1,000 people who sign up for my newsletter, right? And so if people will sign up for the newsletter, if you share that with your circle, your tribe, your people, I'm that chick with the red glasses, right? I'm the girl with the red glasses. I've been around a long time. If you want to know what I'm trying to work on and what's important in the world that I'm working in, sign up for the newsletter. You will get something, not too often. I'm not one of these every day, but once every 2 weeks, and they are thoughtfully written and informative, and I think they're really well done. And I would love for you to engage in that manner.
Okay, tell them again how to reach you.
Okay, so again, I'm Shondra Summers-Armstrong. My website is Shondra, SHONDRA, Armstrong.org. And on there is my phone, my email, and a sign up so that I can contact you. And it has some biographical information about me. It talks about the things that I believe are important, my policy priorities, and we try to keep it up to date, and we try to keep information out there in the community as much as possible. And I'm really grateful to be here today. Thank you.
Well,
Since I got on red glasses, can I be on your team?
Look, don't say I got you. I got a card. Don't say that. Yes, you can.
well, we thank you so much for taking the time to come and meet the community here at the WSO in the historic West Side. And we support you, and whatever the community can do to assist Assemblywoman Armstrong, please do that. Okay? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Very informative.